Tag, very nice, very evil.
Yeah, that's tag shit.
Free fall as I dive through the kaleidoscope in my mind. No rope up to climb. Gotta remind myself that I'm fine. Mama, I don't really.
What up, Tag Nation? It's the commish, ScooterRay, and I'm here to bring you another episode of that NXT.A.G. starring me. Lazy bars, but bars. And hey, we are well on that road to stand and deliver. You know, that's part of WrestleMania weekend, and things are heating up. Matches are being made to get us closer and closer to stand and deliver, because I'm pretty sure by the end of next week, roughly by the end of next week, we will have a very clear picture of what stand and deliver will look like on the NXT side. Because if you've been keeping up on the Raw and SmackDown side, hey, we have plenty of matches for Mania, and we are waiting to get some matches made for stand and deliver. And between tonight and next week, oh yeah, we're here. And the show opens up with Stephanie Vercure. If y'all remember last week, she is the first person in WWE to retain both of her championships. She walked in with 2 championships. She walked out with 2 championships. Now, remember what I said. Hopefully, WWE acknowledges it as WWE rather than, hey, she just did that in NXT. So we shall see. We shall see. But she comes out, and Ava is already in the ring, and they basically talking, and Ava was kind of saying that, hey, both of these championships deserve to be defended. Both of these championships deserve to have a fighting champion. And Stephanie pretty much decides that she wants to vacate the Women's North American Championship. So it's kind of the move sort of Keith Lee did, just with an extra step. Because if you remember, when Keith Lee won the NXT Championship, he vacated the North American Championship literally like the next week. Stephanie was like, nah, I'm going to defend them first. I'm going to let y'all know who I am. I'm going to defend them first, then I'll vacate. From that, Ava did announce that starting tonight and next week, there will be qualifying matches to where it's going to be a 6-woman ladder match for the Women's North American Championship at Stand and Deliver. So pretty much how the championship was decided in the first place is how it's going to be decided at Stand and Deliver. So as she was talking, she basically told Ava too, hey, I'm willing to give up this championship under one condition. I get to pick my opponent at Stand and Deliver. So Ava was like, all right, bet. Let's do it. Jordynne Grace comes out, and Jordynne Grace was like, hey, your challenger is right here. You don't have to look any further. We don't have to play these games, Steph. We don't have to do this. Your challenger is right here. And as soon as she got the words out, Jada Parker comes out and was like, nah, because if it wasn't for you, I would be champion. If it wasn't for you, Jordynne, I would be the NXT women's champion. But since you wanted to stick your nose in my business, I'm not champion. So, and eventually these 2 women get the fight, and Stephanie kind of stands back like, hey, this don't have nothing to do with your girl until y'all 2 figure it out. I know they did announce it's going to be Jordynne versus Jada, and I'm pretty sure the winner of that match is most likely going to be the woman Stephanie chooses, unless she's like, I want a triple threat, which NXT is like triple threat capital of wrestling. They love a triple threat match in NXT. I see why. Don't get me wrong. There's so much talent. You want to showcase it, but boy, they love to put their champions in triple threat situations. But we'll see next week between Jada and Jordan. Next, we get a segment where Trick is kind of saying like, hey, I'm calling out Oba. You know, his ass better be in that ring come next week because I want my belt back. Oba kind of responds like, who the hell does Trick Williams think he is? I am the champion. I don't know what this delusion going on in man's brain, but he ain't talking to me with all of that sass. Sass. He didn't say it, but sass. You know, because Trick was being a little sassy pants. Just saying. But we'll get to that in a little bit. And of course, the ladies' locker room is going crazy because everybody wants to be considered for these qualifying matches to determine the 6 women who will go on to the ladder match. But we do get our first match / qualifying match. It is Zarya going against Lash Legend. Zarya does have Soul, Lash does have Jakara, and of course, the winner will be added to the ladder match. Once again, if you've been listening to these previous weeks, what has happened with Lash and Jakara? They were on track of being this next big thing, and all of a sudden it just faltered. I don't know if they're really trying to save them for the main roster and they're using them to kind of build up the new girls, but hey, whatever. It's just very jarring that Lash and Jakara was killing it. Now all of a sudden they're almost enhancement talent. So of course, by the words, Zarya wins. She gets the dub, and it's like, okay, cool. I get it to an extent. I get it because once again, we're building up the newer stars of NXT, and I mentioned before, I can see Lash and Jakara being called up after Mania. Hopefully, they'll be back on track because they will be one of 3 tag teams, 4. You got Liv and Raquel. You have Chelsea and her secret Hervis with Piper and Alba. You have Kaden and Katana, and then you have Lash and Jakara. Wow, you really don't have that many women tag teams anymore, especially after the whole Bianca, Jade, and Naomi situation. Interesting. I guess you could say still Damage Control. But yeah, ain't that many women's tag teams. Oh, but yeah. So, like I said, Zarya punched her ticket. She's the first woman to qualify for the ladder match, and we will get to a second match later on. Actually, according to my notes, I ain't realized it happened so soon. Oh, no. It didn't happen so soon. They had a face-off. Kalani was back there saying, you know, I should be in this. She was talking to Ava saying, I should be in this. You know, this is meant for me. This is blah, 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 blah. And Roxanne Perez comes up and was like, hey, put your girl. You know, I'm trying to be the first woman of NXT to say that I had the North American, the women's tag, and the women's championship. Put your girl. And Ava was like, well, unfortunately, only one of you because y'all two are in the second qualifying match of the night. But that'll happen later on. Now, we get a very interesting segment because now we get introduced to Dark State by the way of D'Angelo family. So they're all sitting down, talking, discussing, and they all each have little dossiers on Dark State. So Dion Lennox was mentioned first, and they were saying, smart college kid, powerhouse, played football, all of these things. They're kind of running down all of his achievement. And, they were saying, he's kind of a snake because he pretended to be this little nice guy this whole time, and look at him now. Then they introduce Osiris Griffin, who's the tall gentleman with dreads. And they basically mentioned about him being a powerhouse and this, that, and the third. And then Cutler James is the other large gentleman. They was mentioning that he did Spartan races and all of these things. And then Saquon Sugars is the last, and they was like, he's the one that we should watch out with, because he's good at talking. He's good at that talk no jitsu. He's good at making you believe he's a friend, making you believe he's on your side, and then bam, stab you in the back. He'll use you until he just use you up, and then bam, stab you in the back. So now it's kind of like the D'Angelo family is kind of after them too. But then there was a little moment. There was a little moment that kind of, had my Booker brain working for a second. So Tony D and Stacks keep having these small discourse, and Stacks was looking very, very betrayal. Yeah, I said he was looking very oppy. And I'm like, that would be interesting if Stacks was like, I'm gonna go join Dark State. Or he's like a secret leader of Dark State or something. He is the underboss. Why not just become full-fledged boss of your own family, per se? But that would be heartbreaking if Stacks betrayed Tony D. That would be a heartbreaking moment, y'all. I'm just putting that out there. But yes, we are officially introduced to Dark State through the D'Angelo family. And I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad that we finally get names. We finally get faces to the names. Now they don't have to keep covering up their faces now. I'm just saying, like, we don't at this point we know who y'all are. You don't have to keep covering up your faces, but we do finally get introduced to Dark State. Hank and Tank are getting ready for their tag team match. This time they're getting advice from Pretty Deadly. They even had the Pretty Deadly shirts on. And then when NQCC walks by, they was like, see, that's why y'all gonna get y'all asses whooped tonight. And they was like, man, take these bullshit ass shirts off. We don't need this anymore. And that leads into Hank and Tank versus Miles Bourne, Tavion Heights of the NQCC. Of course, Charlie Dempsey and Ren Sinclair is outside the ring. And it's kind of interesting how they building up Hank and Tank. And I think more and more I'm seeing this. Hank and Tank is probably going to be the ones to potentially beat Fraxium at this point, because they're kind of building them up as they're trying to find their way as a tag team and trying to find what's making them. And they keep taking these losses after losses after losses, and they keep getting different advice from different tag teams. And it wouldn't surprise me that eventually things start to turn around, and Hank and Tank are the ones to dethrone Fraxium. And I'll say this. Actually, I'll reiterate the same sentiment. I actually enjoy watching Hank and Tank. I enjoy watching them belly boys do their thing, because they move around. They're not stiff. They're not just big men just in there doing, Haas-like moves. They're in there flying around. They're in there, being aggressive with the smash mouth style. They are going to be a very charismatic tag team. If they keep them packaged the way they are, it's going to be very charismatic, and I can't wait to see it. But I think Hank and Tank might be the ones to possibly take them belts off of Fraxium. But NQCC does get the dub. And then whenever Hank and Tank are in the back, they run into Fraxium. And, they're kind of still doing this whole thing between Frazier and Axiom, where, Frazier was kind of being the asshole. And Axiom was like, bruh, like, why are you being so mean? Like, that ain't how we supposed to do that. That's not us. Why are you being like this? And it kind of just, ends with that. I do want to say I did miss a segment. There was a segment that Enamora and Briggs was back there talking, and Wesley, Tyreek, and Tyson were back there, and they started talking to Enamora and Briggs, and it's going to lead to Enamora versus Wesley, and I think that's going to be next week. I thought it was going to be tonight, but it's going to end up being next week. Enamora versus Wesley. Next up, we get the segment of Trick Willie calling out Obafemi, and Trick Willie comes out there, and he's basically like, iterating the same stuff. I want my belt back. I'm 1-1. I'm him. I'm all of these things. Like, I'm supposed to be the one. I'm supposed to be the man of NXT. You know what I'm saying? Like, though you may have the belt, but I'm still the man around here and around these parts and things like that. So Javon comes out there, and Javon, him and Javon was kind of going back and forth, but Javon did get the best of Trick, because Javon was like, look here, you talking about you 1 of 1 and you this, that, and the third. You don't sound like Trick Williams. You don't sound like Trick Williams. You starting to sound like Carmelo Hayes. Have you even got out of Carmelo Hayes' shadow yet? And Trick was like, well, look here, Javon, you in my shadow, big dog. Since you want to talk all this, you in my shadow. And they still going back and forth. And then Javon was like, hey, I did the one thing you couldn't do. I dropped Obafemi. And of course, you say their name, and they appear. So Oba comes out, and all three of them kind of have words. Sorry for the low-res photo from WWE, but hey, we're here. But all three men are kind of having words, going back and forth. And it wasn't officially clear until Ava comes out, and then Ava's like, well, hey, at Stand and Deliver, Obafemi will defend his title against Trick Williams and Javon Evans. Like I said, NXT is the king of triple threat matches, and Obafemi's last title match was a triple threat match against A-Town Down Under. He also won the NXT Championship in a triple threat match between Trick and Eddie Thorpe. And he had that banger of a triple threat match when it was Oba, Josh Briggs, and Dijak. They love putting Obafemi in triple threat matches. Oba is the king of triple threats. I mean, just putting it out there. So after the match gets attacked, the lights go out, and them Dark State boys show up, and they come in there to wreak chaos. They kind of beat up on they came in and attacked all of them at once, and then they kind of got the best of Oba. They kind of knocked Oba kind of just out the way. Then they kind of beat up Javon. Then they also, it was an interesting moment, because once again, I kind of hypothesized some things. It was an interesting moment. They all 4 of them, and once again, apologies for the low-res photo from WWE at the moment, but the lights came on, and all 4 of them were surrounding Trick. Then eventually they attacked Trick. I'm just saying. Little suspect. Little red herring could be thrown in here. But hey, they all 4 jumped up on Trick. And then after it was all over with, of course, they made out like bandits. They out of there. And then Ava was back there talking to Stevie and Mr. Stone. And basically, Ava was like, I'm getting tired of this. Dark State is going to have a 6-man tag next week. 3 members of Dark State is going to fight against the main event of Stand and Deliver. So Ova, Javon, and Trick has to team up against 3 members of Dark State. Dark State does have a little video of them basically saying, if this is what they want, we got this. We doing this. Fine. Bet. And of course, some of the other things that they've been iterating for the past couple of weeks. But yes, we will get Dark State in their first match next week. Next up, we do get not so much next up. Fighting backstage. It was Andre Chase. He was saying that his ribs was hurt. He can't necessarily compete, and Uriah and Kale was like, hey, we'll take you home. And as they pushed him in the wheelchair, there's a kerfuffle going on, and Andre Chase like, get me out of here. It was Jordan and Jada. They just backstage just fighting. They was backstage fighting, and eventually they get separated, and I think that's what prompted the match to happen for next week. Then we get when I skipped ahead and talked about the whole Hank and Tank and Fraxium, after Hank and Tank walks off, Swipe Right, it is a mini stable that's in Evolve, but two members of Swipe Right is saying, hey, we want to prove, we've been running things in Evolve, and we want to go against the tag team champions who's been running things in NXT. So we're going to get, and I don't remember the two gentlemen's names, but the fact that we went all the way millennial with their team name of Swipe Right. I'm pausing for dramatic effect to let that sink in, that the team name is Swipe Right. But they'll be going against Fraxium, I think, next week as well. So, yeah. Swipe Right. Somebody had to do it at some point, I guess. Roxanne Perez, Kalani Jordan, to see who's going to be the second woman to be in the ladder match. And it was a pretty solid match. Ultimately, it led to Kalani winning. So now I'm definitely intrigued to see what Roxanne's swan song is going to be in NXT. So I wonder if they're going to do one of those things to where the remaining women that didn't make it are going to compete for the final spot type situation. But I'm kind of intrigued to see what they do with Roxanne, because it seems all but certain that Roxanne is going to be called up. So I figure she should have at least one final hurrah. And I thought she was going to make it to the ladder match, especially since that was the way Kalani won. But hey, Kalani gets the dub and everything. So it was like, oh, I was actually surprised. If I was a betting man, I would have lost whatever money. I'm just putting it out there. I would have lost, but Kalani gets the dub. So now Kalani and Zarya are the two women who will be in the ladder match. And we get a moment with Zoruka, because that's what Soul was calling them, Zol with a Z. And basically, Soul kind of broke it to Zarya that she has a match as well. So maybe she may be in the ladder match too. And Kalani was like, it doesn't even matter because I'm going to get my belt back and stuff. Then we get to our main event of the evening. We got Shawn Spears defending that North American Championship against Ricky Saints. And of course, Shawn Spears has the Cullen. And I'm not surprised at how this match went. I'm more surprised of what's going on with Shawn Spears and the Cullen. Because him and Ricky have a pretty good match, pretty decent match. I think they would have gave us a little more oomph had this would have been on one of the pay-per-views. But of course, it makes sense for it to be on NXT TV, because I honestly thought this was going to be more as Stand and Deliver, but they changed my mind because it happened tonight. So pretty back and forth. Ricky's like, the revolution starts, and he had to deal with the culling and everything, but ultimately it led with Ricky taking out the other members besides Izzy, and him hitting Spears with the spear and the Rochambeau, and 1, 2, 3. and new. Not only has he won the North American Championship, but they made mention that he's broke Ethan Page's record of, fastest to become a champion in NXT. I know. And then after the match, while Ricky is celebrating, Ethan Page does come out and beat up Ricky Saints. So I guess, to my surprise, Stand and Deliver is probably going to be Saints versus Page, maybe Spears as well. But now, for my wrestling peeps out there, let me know if I'm tripping or reaching. Now we know Spears, Saints, Page, and Rhodes are all friends. That's not a secret. If you know, you know. Is it me, or the Spears, Saints, and Page characters all represent different personas Cody has played throughout his career? Saints being like a pretty boy, kind of reminiscent to Dash and Cody Rhodes. Ethan Page, when Cody was kind of like in the Bullet Club, and he was very cocky, full of himself. And with Spears and kind of his mood, not so necessarily Stardust, but it was times where Cody Rhodes could get very kind of quote unquote dark. So maybe that's just me and my brain in the way I connect things, but I do like how it seems like his three friends that are in NXT are all playing somewhat a different version of Cody throughout his career. Once again, I could be reaching. I have a long reach, but I could be reaching. But yeah, Saints is your new North American champion. Interesting to see what happens with the Cullen going forward, because they really just made Spears a transitional champion. Spears literally won it from Tony D like a month ago, and boom, he's lost it. So unless they do Saints, Spears, Page, which once again, another triple threat, unless they do them three as Stand and Deliver, but if we just do All Ego versus Saints here, I guess that would make sense, considering how the show ended with Page beating up Saints and him holding up the championship himself. But it'll be interesting to see how all of this moves forward, and with the Cullen and all of this, like, it's gonna be interesting. But hey, I'll be here to guide along the way too. Look, they on that road to Stand and Deliver, I'm right here too. I am buckled up. I'm trying to follow the vehicle, but sometimes they may be driving too fast for you, boy. I'm just saying. But that was NXT as a whole tonight. Thank y'all for tuning in. Much appreciated. Much love. Shout outs to my tag brethren, Lip Dizzle, Juggernaut 097, Jaeger Bombastic, So Fantastic, The Heartthrob, and Kicking It with Leo, aka Liv's #1 fan. Thank y'all for tuning in once again. Whether you loved it or hate it, don't forget to rate it. Thumbs up, thumbs down, preferably thumbs up. Like, share, comment, subscribe. And after you subscribe, you guys to tag that notification bell so you can be notified for all the videos and content that we post on this channel. And you can't see me, pun intended, to John Cena, but I'm warming up this too sweet to deliver to the people. So love one another, take care of one another, love yourself, and take care of yourself. Until then, tag Nation. I'm about to say the wrong affiliation. Until next time, Tag Nation, tag out. But let me hit y'all with this too sweet. Bam. Peace.